Hey, we're back in part 2. You just heard Danzig, the Revengeful, and Death Red Moon from
Death Red Moon
from Death Red Saboth.
Saboth. Yeah. And,
if you're a fan of that metal show,
no one's a fan of that metal show.
But if you were pissed off and watch it to make yourself angry like we do, that was the one thing you walk away from that show that Danzig was on, at least, is how to pronounce the title of the album.
And they asked some lots of wonderful, insightful questions about the record, including
so when Mother
came couldn't even tell the difference between the Mother of 88 and the Mother of 93 that was re-released on the Thrall EP that actually made him popular.
Yep.
But anyways, it was
about the PMRC, and I don't think they understood that.
It's a weird that shows like a weird it's like self-mutilation or something. Like
it's like a film buff watching Siskel and Ebert. Not even that. Siskel and Ebert's not terrible, but watching some
like
terrible
Gene Shalit.
Brad Pitt was the Pitts in this movie. Yeah, that kind of shit.
Yeah, but anyways,
sum up a movie by a pun. Yeah,
we're staring at the gatefold of Danzig, which is a nice naked photo of what appears to be maybe a gothy stripper type with some fake tits.
It kind of looks like Evan Seinfeld's wife or ex-wife, the Tara Kilpatrick, the porn star.
Sure.
The Asian porn star. Well, Evan Seinfeld's now in porn.
Yeah. Again.
And not to go down that road too much, but I stopped at the Lion's Den on the way down to Kentucky with a certain person from another country, and saw a lot of Evan Seinfeld related stuff down there.
He's popular in Kentucky. They like their tattoo.
No, this is in Ohio.
Okay. They like their tattoo in New York.
Kentucky's a little more classy than Ohio.
Yeah. She kind of has a cute horror-ish kind
thing going on.
I don't detect
Wayne's World 2.
I don't detect the Asian thing so much. I get more of a vibe of the chick from Cemetery Man.
But that chick's unbelievable. This chick's
Anna Fulci.
Passable.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, nice collagen lips and things. But we should probably talk about how this is one of the most kick-ass records of the entire year, Mark.
Yes. Danzig, who many know he's had kind of a checkered past since 1994.
Yeah.
Which, that was kind of like the last classic Danzig record with the class lineup of Chuck Biscuits, Eerie Von, and John Christ.
Yeah.
And Danzig's kind of contention that that the band didn't necessarily matter, that he wrote most of the music. I can kind of believe a little bit more of that now.
Now that you hear this
I hear this, because having, Black Acid Evil and Circle of Snakes and a couple of the other records that he put out in the interim, was it Child of the Devil or something? I mean, there's some decent songs on them, but there's not been like a consistently good Danzig record in since almost 15-20 years.
Yeah. And he's had Tommy Victor from Prong on some of those records, but he never really utilized them until I feel like this record. And then he brought in Johnny Kelly on drums from Typo Negative fame. And Danzig's playing most of the guitar parts and things like that. Tommy does some of the leads and things. But
I think on Danzig wrote everything on the record. He recorded even like the track Black Candy. He recorded the drums and basically everything on it. But the whole, reading quite a few interviews actually with him about the record. He's been recording over the last couple of years, like basically in his home studio. And he said somehow that happened, but. He actually went back to like an old Misfits and Sam Hain trick to playing the guitars through bass amps, and he wanted to like actually mess with the production, and because he flirted a lot with the whole like electronic angle of things, and now like actually wanting to get back to a warm analog sound again. And the whole record, I mean, there's not a dud on it.
No,
it's a fantastic record front to back. It has all the kind of everything you'd want out of a Danzig record, and some surprises, like
it's all there.
Juju Bone, which is kind of almost like Killer Wolf Part 2, that kind of vibe. Like every archetypal Danzig song,
like Candy's the She Rides stripper kind of song.
Yeah, it's a fantastic record front to back.
This was alongside the other D's that I'll be talking about in later shows, the Deftones and Dillinger. This was one of my summer records for sure. It just reminds me of this summer for some reason. It reminds me of staining the deck and power washing and singing Danzig songs, with the sun beating down. And it was just a fun party kind of record. And it was a great sing along, ride around in the car with your buddies, and you can start to sing these choruses, especially like those soaring moments, like in the Revengeful and Death Rat Moon, is just like
we haven't heard Danzig hit those kind of notes in a long time.
Yeah, or if he's did, it was like one song on a forgettable record, and I'm sorry, but I'm not going to invest my time into those records previous for one or two songs.
They're not worth parsing. I mean, the only good thing I think or relevant thing that he's put out is that Rarities disc, which has a lot of really good stuff on it. A lot of
that was older stuff too.
A lot of it's Danzig 4 session stuff that never got recorded and stuff. But it's it's just nice to see that Danzig, like a mainstay like Danzig, can come back. Especially, I mean, Danzig and Iron Maiden on the same list.
Yeah, it says a lot.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, exactly. And then
and I think this record got really positive reviews, but for some reason it's vacant from all of the year-end lists.
Well, we don't know for sure on Terrorizer. We haven't seen that one pop up yet.
But I've looked at, a bunch of like ones. Metal blogs, and lots of I've probably looked at 15, 20, 30 of these different year-end lists. It's completely, it's even mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
Like Revolver type lists. It's not on that.
I wonder if he's burnt so many bridges that as a person that people just aren't willing to acknowledge.
But Burzum is on lists.
Yeah, but Burzum sells,
Burzum's controversial, but Burzum is actually, outside of being a dickhead, he's a murderer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Danzig's just a dickhead sometimes.
Yeah. And gets his ass kicked on YouTube,
I guess.
And has a comic strip with Henry Rollins, What's not to love about this Danzig record? And it pisses me off that personally that I didn't see it like on things like Decibel and stuff. You know what I mean? When they're throwing like cult records on there that like numbers say 30 through 40 just to sort of get a couple things.
And look in 5 years if that stuff's going to be relevant. Yeah. And this
I'm still going to pull this out at the same time and the same frequency that I pull out Danzig 4, Danzig 3, Danzig 2, and the debut.
If it actually fills in the gaps of the catalog.
It's Danzig 5 in my opinion. That's what this is.
Yeah.
So if you like the first 4 and you kind of hesitated because you were leery like we were,
buy it.
I downloaded this and then burned a copy for Mark, and together between the two of us, we'd listen to shit out of this until we knew it was a great record.
When he played, when he did the Blackest of the Black tour with Possessed and Toxic Holocaust, and
all these songs fit in perfect with the other stuff. So. Anyways,
it's kind of like a nice renaissance to see him back, but
that's our flying the flag for Danzig and kind of giving him 2 songs since he was denied being on a lot of lists and things like that. Plus, we've already done a Danzig show, so we probably won't get a chance to spotlight an album like this in the future, at least not for a long time. So,
but it's definitely worth going out and buying Sight Unseen.
Yeah,
I mean it's got my seal of approval on it for sure.
On a Wicked Night, fantastic. Rebel Spirits has some like double bass drum stuff that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing we should mention. There's a little bit of modernism to it, but it's not. I mean, like the track, what was the second, or the Revengeful, where we got those crazy pinch harmonics, which at first is like, cards on the table. I've never heard Black Label Society. That's what I imagine Zakk Wylde to sound like, is just pinch harmonics. But it works in the context of
Let's tell the story of our favorite Metal Mania video that we've seen like over the last couple months is
Bark at the Moon.
Bark at the Moon live new version where Ozzy's like senile and clapping with his sunglasses or whatever, and Zakk Wylde just pinch harmonics the shit out of everything. It's like an orgy of pinch harmonics.
It's a new drinking game.
We were gonna, but we'd get. And I almost
don't want to hear any Black Label Society because I think I'm gonna get let down.
I just imagine
if it's like that Bark of the Moon song.
It just pinches the whole time. So, but anyway, so
there's like some modern elements on the Danzig record, but it doesn't seem forced. It's stuff that I think he's kind of like been around long enough to this was what works in my sound.
And there's like a lot of like fuzz tone on things that you mentioned, like the way he recorded it through the bass amp and different things to get like a certain sound. But then there's also like there's some amazingly intricate guitar stuff kind of happening and some like really awesome leads that are sort of buried beneath all that sort of stuff. And it's heavily layered. It has just such a great organic feel to it, and it's just great to have him back personally. And hopefully he kind of stays the trajectory.
I think he's kind of found the error of his ways, like a lot of people have. Like it's what. Nobody wants to be lumped into one certain area and be cliche, but there's also that thing that if, this is what you're really, really good at that nobody else can do.
Or hitting those soaring notes and those kind of just
nobody sings like that
and things like that.
So,
and a record that got a lot of fanfare, the opposite of Danzig, I guess, is
the anti-Danzig. We'll call it
the anti-Danzig. Is Marrow of the Spirits from Agalloch or Agalloch as Headbangers Ball wanted to pronounce it. Which, by the way, let's talk for a moment about Headbangers Ball and the poor soul Albert Mudrian from Decibel, the editor-in-chief, who's done some podcasts with us.
Hats off to Albert for...
He had to go through hell. I feel like...
He flew the flag for true metal, and he was up against... And I'm, a lot of it's political kind of crap, but it was nice to see that seeing somebody stand up for some kind of sanity on those shows, and I could tell in his face that he was not happy to be there.
Yeah, it was horrible. Horribly painful.
Oh, why the fuck am I here?
Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about, the Headbangers Ball, just like, I guess it'd be a couple weekends from now from when you guys hear this, but...
it's like their year in review show. You can watch it on, like, MTV.com.
Go check it out. Go ruin 20 minutes of your life like we did.
Wonder how this... You thought Jamie Josta was a questionable host of Headbangers Ball? This guy's a fucking moron.
This guy's a douche.
I have no idea what his credits are.
And he reminds me of like kids that I see at shows now who don't know anything about the history of metal.
Yeah.
Who are, all he kept aping was the Seven Dust record. Man, that's really cool. Like, dude.
Seven Dust and Ozzy Scream. Really? Okay.
It was horrific. And I love how Albert, when he brought up Iron Maiden, it was like a fart in an elevator. I mean, everybody's like quiet, well, that new Final Frontier is a really great record, unlike, say, maybe the Ozzy, which is probably overproduced and bullshit,
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah, that didn't do much for me. And then they just like, it was like, he was like the guy who was just trying to like fit into any conversation.
What it felt like to me was like, it was like a Fox News interview situation where they have the guy that's immediately gonna be demonized. Like, okay, we gotta have the outsider on here to like be contrarian.
It was sad. But the record that Albert talked about as being his favorite record of the year was this Agalloch, Marrow of the Spirits, and the guy made a point of being like, I can't even pronounce that, dude. Like, I mean, it was
a bilingual guy that can't pronounce Agalloch.
Yeah, and he made like a really like big deal about pronouncing Sepultura and all these and Mex Caballero or whatever.
He rolled a lot of R's in the rest of the thing, yeah.
Yeah. So it just, if that guy's out there and you're listening to this or that guy, punch him. Because he deserves it. I don't care.
Or at least give him a bad glance.
Yeah, because he's a douche and a half. So.
It's disconcerting that we've got 600 stations on cable now. Although cable's becoming quickly irrelevant with the internet, but that basically metal, the kind of spokesperson for it is this douchebag, or we've got Eddie Trunk and his
This guy made Eddie Trunk seem like a guy I want to hang out with.
Yeah,
really. That's how bad.
And as dumb as Eddie Trunk
cares about stuff,
he really honestly does. He's an enthusiast from his area.
Yeah, he's not a trendy guy. I mean, no one who talks about UFO as much as him is going to be a trendsetter. So. No. But this Agalloch record, it's a great record, and I know for Mark, it was a hard sell at first because you've had to deal with these guys, on a personal level, and they like Danzig have personalities that might. I
haven't dealt with them on a personal level, but I've been associated in situations to where I've had to deal with their opinions on things that I think are ridiculous.
And things, yeah.
I don't know them personally, so I'm not going to say anything. But
and we don't know Danzig personally either, but we just heard things, both ways, sort of thing. But these guys, hail from Oregon, Pacific Northwest, and
Portland, Oregon.
And I've been into them since their debut that came out on the end way back in the
Pale Folklore.
Yeah, the 99 or 2000, I think. Mm-hmm. And the records they did after that, like the Mantle and things, had a lot of Godspeed You Black Emperor mixed with like early Ulver,
which is in this as well,
and some Opathisms and different things like that. But I feel like everything kind of started to come together on this record. And Profound Lore put it out. I think it's the first record they put out with that label.
Yeah,
and every song fairly epic.
They haven't put anything out. Well, they put a couple EPs out, but Ashes Against the Grain was the last record they put out a couple years ago,
and that was on the end. I think that was their last record that they did for the end, and just the whole package itself with the embossed kind of layout, the embossed logo, and song titles on the back. I mean, it's just
spot gloss.
Yeah, it's just a nice classy thing.
Profound Lore is Canadian.
Yeah,
little Canadian represent here after all of our Canadian shows.
Four-parters, yeah. And they got a new drummer, the guy who drums for Ludacris, and Asep, I think is his name. or Decker, Asa
Yeah,
Decker.
because John, I forget his last name, the songwriter, vocalist, guitarist, did most of the drum recordings on the last couple of records.
Yeah.
But live, I'm not sure. I think they're rotating.
This has a nice organic feel, and the drums do a lot for it, especially into the Painted Gray, which has a sweet breakdown kind of in the middle. And this is, I guess, the opening number. There's a little 3-minute intro with some kind of foresty, kind of over, kind of bird stock kind of stuff kind of going on, nature sounds and such. And it flows really well together. One song kind of bleeds into another, and obviously it was Decibel's album of the year, and it's up there for me. I wouldn't say it's the album of the year, but it definitely taps into the early Ulver, early Enslaved kind of feel. Let me Dark Tranquility stuff.
Yeah,
as well,
that's the thing. Dark Tranquility, who's can be the whipping boy of a lot of people. They never really get a whole lot of respect. Their name probably doesn't help. But this reminds me of like Moonclad Reflection era Dark Tranquility demos, or almost basically anything pre Skydancer. I mean, to a T on a lot of the stuff. Tons of Ulver. The thing sounds like it was recorded. The Agalloch record sounds like it was recorded in 1992. Yeah, and I don't see a ton of new things coming into it. This seems like it's like a validation of all that old stuff without validating the old stuff to me. Like a lot of the stuff I really loved growing up, as a teenager, that just kind of got panned, but now that this is wrapped up in a slick cover, and I think it's a good record, but I don't think it's really that original at all.
Yeah, I can see that.
That'll probably be our biggest, controversy on the show.
Yeah. And I know, I remember back when like the last two Ulver records kind of came out, and I mean, I know they never really did much for you. You kind of
Agalloch records. You
kind of what'd I say? Yeah. Ulver, Agalloch, you kind of thought they were boring, and that's a fair statement.
Pale Folklore ad, when it first came out, I thought it was interesting, but upon revisiting it again, I think it's dated.
A lot of it doesn't hold up as well. Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe there's a lot of spotlight being put on this record, possibly because it's American, and because like America doesn't really have any kind of black metal-y things that are of this kind of.
That aren't hybridized.
Yeah.
Because you've got things like, Tombs and, Black Anvil, a lot of stuff that's kind of more hybrid, hardcore black metal stuff.
But this is like almost like, America's Opeth mixed with like America's like kind of epic black metal stuff, or America's Enslaved or whatever, Yeah. And those are all bands that bring a lot of accolades with them, and a lot of awards and different things. And so there's a tendency to want to, to sort of promote that. But the production is fantastic. It's organic. It's very 70s analog feeling and things like that. And definitely a grower. Even you said yourself that once you got through it a couple times, you were like, actually, I kind of like the record.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's terrible. I think people should buy it if they're interested. But
it's probably slightly overhyped.
I think it's definitely over. I think it's political that a lot of these bands get. I mean, this record was on an NPR list, for God's sake. Yeah. I mean, there's somebody out there that knows the right hands to shake and the right buttholes to lick to get a lot of this stuff going.
Pitchfork winked off on this too.
Exactly, and I don't understand.
I think misanthropic stuff, has a tendency to appeal to people for some reason, like the Wolves of the Throne Room and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's some kind of trendiness. But
for some reason, American bands get a free pass on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think the Funeral Mist record is infinitely more interesting than this.
Even the Marduk.
The last Marduk record, I think was fucking brilliant.
But it just. What I think is nice about the Agalloch, and I think this is what sells people, is it has a warmth to it, much like sort of the early Opeth did, in that
it's not accessible though.
It can cross some boundaries, I think, for some people.
Vocally, it's not accessible.
Yeah, but I think some people can get over that because the music is a little warmer. Whereas the Funeral Mist and the Marduk are so confrontational that you're going to lose some people right away.
Imagery-wise, you're not really being confronted by anything with Agalloch. Yeah. It's a mood setting. It's like a Godspeed You Black Emperor type approach.
And you can sell this to people who maybe in the past have been scared of some of the imagery or the stereotypes of metal, in a way. You look at this cover and it doesn't tell you a lot. You can kind of put your own imprint on it, maybe. In a sense, it's not blatantly being satanic. It's not blatantly being about death or violence or
it could be
killing.
It could be sitting right next to an indie rock record, and you wouldn't know the difference.
And I think that's the key thing, for these sort of trendy kind of pitchfork kind of things, So, and the anti-trend. Well, we'll talk about the anti-trend when we come back. We got a nice follow-up piece to Agalloch, but we'll kind of leave that as a surprise for you guys both. So enjoy Agalloch's Into the Painted Gray from Marrow of Spirits.
We just heard Kvelertak with Blodtorst, I believe, which is a bloodthirst, and Kvelertak means stranglehold in Norwegian. Before
like
that,
Nugent stranglehold,
but cooler. Yeah. And then before that, we heard Agalloch, Into the Painted Grey from Marrow of the Spirit. Kvelertak, Norwegian.
Turbo Negro kind of feel to it for sure in that song.
Very much so. This is a band that I don't often look at MySpace very often, but a person I knew that I respected their opinion said, "Hey, you should check out this band, Kvelertak." And I was like, "How the hell do you spell that?" For one, and then started listening to them, and I was like, "Wow, this is like everything I like about music." Was in this. It's punchy, it's energetic,
punk rock,
and it's got
old MC5 Stooges sort of things going on.
It's got black metal stuff going on in it, and then let me find my notes here.
Produced by Kurt Ballou, art
by John Blazley from Baroness. Mm-hmm. So it's got already. It's like, okay, why would people not like this?
Yeah,
and they toured with Converge and I think Coalesce.
Kailisa.
That's right. In their European tour. And if you look on like YouTube for videos of these guys, they're just monsters on stage, like energy wise, and it's like the Converge of
Europe or something,
of Norway or something. Yeah. There's no boundaries as far as like the influence of the music, and I was blown away by it.
And a fitting piece to follow the sort of pretentiousness of Agalloch.
So, some could say that Kvelertak is anti-pretentiousness, but I think they're like it's like like Kiss. As opposed to Neil Young or something.
Sure,
I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if Neil Young took himself that seriously. Yeah, Agalloch takes himself pretty seriously. Maybe Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Although I don't want to compare Agalloch to ELP because I fucking hate ELP.
Yeah.
And I consider myself a 70s prog fan, and ELP is like suicide to me. Like, fucking kill me. Chris, if you're listening, you're probably dying a slow death hearing that out there. But I really have dug this record, and I kind of broke down a couple weeks ago and finally spent some money to get it because it is a little bit expensive.
The funny thing is, it's now being domestically imported or domestically released. I forget what label is going to put it out. It'll probably be like $12. I paid $22 or $24 for it.
I think I paid $19 or $20.
It was well worth it, and just front to back, it's just such a. It's so weird to see like so many bands now that can embrace black metal, punk rock, rock and roll, death metal, hardcore, and it makes sense.
yeah, it's not like and we're gonna hear. I think the next three bands that we're sort of ending part two with all share, even though they're completely different in a lot of ways, all share that hybridization that they can kind of draw from so many different influences and make them sort of seamless together. You know? And I think that's one of the themes of, I think, a lot of what you and I tend to get into are bands that aren't afraid to sort of break down some of those boundaries and kind of shatter the shackles. And there's always going to be genre fans who are only death metal or only black metal or grind or whatever, hardcore or whatever. But you're right. It's nice to hear something so refreshingly different.
Short.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a trend that I'm kind of like excited about. It seemed like over the last 10 or 15 years, people wanted to, since we have 78 minutes we can put on a CD, we better put at least close to that on it.
Yeah.
And that's too much. This is like a 34-minute record or something. It's like Rain and Blood length.
Yep.
It's, and there's a handful of other ones that are actually, similar to that length. Even that Nails is 18 minutes.
Is super short, yeah.
And it's, as a full-length record. But, yeah, it's nice to see something that's really, really energetic and honest.
And I think what's beautiful about this record and then the Agalloch is there you sort of see the twin the twin personalities, of us in some sort of sense, Mark has always, and I'm into it as well, but, we've often defined ourselves, if you look at like Mark, Chris, and I, who kind of all grew up together in metal and stuff, Chris is on the sort of clean side of things a lot of times, not always, just like.
Well, he likes layered, polished, more,
and to his own, kind of thing.
Totally, yeah, it's just an aesthetic thing.
And you've always been into the shorter, a little bit dirtier, not as well polished, but with more kind
punch
of
and energy, honesty, yeah.
And then I can kind of fall in between. I can gravitate either way, depending on what my mood sort of sets. So I'm always going to be the one who probably gets more into like pretentious proggy stuff like the Agallochs and the Atheists, whereas Mark's always going to gravitate to stuff like this. And then sometimes we'll both get into both of them.
It's funny that I never got into punk rock until later.
Yeah.
Because it would have totally been up my alley.
was probably more into punk rock than Mark was when I first met him. But that was because back when you and Chris got into it, punk and metal were kind of in different camps.
Well, and the thing when I was like, okay, this is the kind of music I love, is when I heard Extreme Noise Terror and all that like crust stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of, okay, I like the aggressive vocals, but then more punky, punchy guitar. So
yeah. And it's so weird because if we talk about like this year and music that we've had to listen to and stuff like that, for me it's been really an odd year because I'm teaching this rock and roll history class now, and I've had to go and spend so much of my time actually listening to like old stuff, and that's been cool because I've discovered things like like you discovering punk rock or something like that. Here I am, Mark's down listening to like the Ghost record for the 30th time, and I'm getting into the intricacies of like the Ronettes, Be My Baby, upstairs.
But that all adds to your musical vocabulary.
Sure.
I think it's important, but still, on the other hand, it can feel like work.
Yeah, it is, and I enjoyed it though. I mean, I enjoyed having to like get into different things, and punk was something I was already into, but I had to go and watch a lot of punk documentaries and really delve deep into some things, and I found out some things that I liked a lot more than I used to, and some things that I'm kind of like, it's good.
I found my genre of punk that I like, the early 80s hardcore.
The hardcore stuff,
is where I'm really into.
Well, speaking of early 80s hardcore, no, just kidding. We've got the Deftones next, and a record that is probably the best thing that they've done since White Pony.
Yeah, and Saturday Night Wrist was a good record, but it was pretty good. It was uneven. Yeah, it wasn't as this record. I mean, it's kind of flawless. I just listened to it again yesterday,
and it flows together. And this is definitely along with like the Dillinger Escape Plan, kind of one of those records that I guess crossed over in a lot. It has equal sort of extreme metal fans as it does sort of mainstream metal fans probably.
I think Deftones unfairly they've been lumped into that whole Korn and Limp Bizkit unfortunate.
Yeah. I want to believe that they've sort of broken.
I think they've broken that out, but I think there's still a lot of stigma around their name purely because they were like that. But and I had the same kind before I went and listened to them until when White Pony came out. That's when I first started listening to them. When I went back and like these guys are fantastic. I mean, it's like an American version of what Catatonia did later on or something,
And the thing about any genre, you've been in states of mind in your life where you've made blanket statements against genres, no matter what, whether it was country or something else, and then you always have to kind of go and prove yourself wrong. It's almost like
if you're not, you're kind of nuts.
Every genre has probably its brilliant thing, and if this is the thing that kind of emerges maybe out of the new metal scene, then so be it.
It's probably the closest thing to mainstream music that I listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I don't know if Iron Maiden's considered that or not. They're still so niche. I don't know if you can buy it at Target, but this is like a CD. If I saw it at Target, I'd buy it.
Yeah, sure. And,
sight unseen, or without necessarily hearing it. But
the nice thing about the Deftones is that they've been able to bring emotiveness to the American kind of metal scene, which sometimes can be kind of forgotten,
Well, it's honest emotional content, not like something like Within This Moment kind of or Evanescence that can be theatrically over dramatic.
Sure,
but this is actually like hairs on your arms stand up when you hear some of this stuff.
Yeah, and for the ladies, it's kind of Deftones have always been kind of a romantic band. I mean, it's like a makeout record or something. There's like a romantic beauty to the
it's
whole
like putting
thing.
all your emotions on your sleeve.
Yeah, and that raw honesty is goes over pretty well, and the record's Diamond Eyes, and I definitely listened to it a lot this summer. I mean, it was on my iPod when I was over in Australia and Fiji and Italy and Greece and stuff like that. I mean, songs like the title track Diamond Eyes, This Place Is Death, Sex Tape, Beauty School, which we're gonna hear, and then the song I recently kind of been getting into and almost was gonna play was 976 Evil, but
what was the bass player's name that got in a car accident, was in a coma?
Chi.
Okay, because that was one of the big issues why I had a little bit of like trepidation going into listening to this record, because I really loved his bass sound and his presence, kind of what he brought to the band.
Yeah, and Sergio Vega from Quicksand, a band I'm a big fan of, filled in for them, which is cool because like Deftones worship Quicksand.
And now we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I was like, I'm kind of bummed out there's not the clangy kind of bass sound that that she had, but it kind of makes sense. And it's a little bit more respectful for him to you bring somebody in, let them do their own thing and not necessarily try to reenact what this guy was doing.
And I think the unsung hero, I mean, Chino gets a lot of attention because he's such a fantastic and emotive vocalist.
He's a songwriter too.
And he does some of the guitarists and things like that. But Frank Delgado, the keyboardist and sampler, I mean, the layers that are kind of like present reminds me of last year's Catatonia record, how just that level of a little bit of keyboards added so much atmosphere to that last Catatonia.
It's kind of subtle though, because if you took it away, you'd realize it wasn't there, but you don't necessarily like, oh, there's some keyboards or there's a sample or something.
It's sort of like what Enslaved does too, and really good black metal bands aren't shoving this, keyboard completely in your face, or if they are, the way the Emperor used it in the early days and stuff, where it's like almost overwhelming and like enveloping you in this sort of like atonal keyboard, sound or something like that. But
that was like the only like part. It's a lot early Emperor that you could actually wrap your head around, like the melody line. Everything else is so brutal in your face.
Yeah, exactly. But Diamond Eyes, for sure. If you're a naysayer, maybe this isn't the heaviest song on the record that we're gonna play, but I think it shows you the sort of soundscapes. And Mark and I are suckers for the sort of Catatonia, Paradise Lost kind of wear your emotions on your sleeves kind of stuff. I mean that's real to me. That's Johnny Cash. That's whatever you want to call it.
That's what I look for in music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
Waylon Jennings, dude.
Yeah, there you go.
Just listened to some of that a couple weeks ago.
So we got Deftones Beauty School from the Diamond Eyes record, and then we've got some Black Breath, which we'll talk about Escape from Death from Heavy Breathing when we come back.
All right, you just heard Black Breath, not Death Breath, but Black Breath, Escape from Death from the Heavy Breathing record from Southern Lord, and Deftones Beauty School from the Diamond Eyes record.
And Black Breath or Entomb Dismember. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry.
Well, this is an interesting trend. Now that you bring it up, Black Breath. There's that like Nails kind of falls into this. Trap Them. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a handful of others as well, but
Death Breath, who you mentioned. I mean,
Death Breath is more of it's more of a repulsion autopsy kind of thing. But as far as like somebody capturing the Boss heavy metal pedal, Sunlight Studio sound from 1989-90. Well, the funny thing.
The Nirvana 2000
last year at Maryland Death Fest, the dude over Softstrom from Nirvana 2002, he had some guitar issues, and one of the dudes from Black Breath's like, "Oh, here you go." He's like, "I didn't have to change anything. It's like this was my tone
perfectly." Yeah.
And the song that you just heard, the Escape from Death, is more entombed and more Dismember than Dismember.
Than they have been in a while.
It's pretty unbelievable, but it's not just a blatant copy either. It's the guitar tone is there, but as far as like the speed, it's much more Americanized, hardcore. To some degree. Vocally is a little bit more punchy, hardcore-ish, I guess. But live, this band, like the CD does not do them. If you thought that sounded great, see them live.
And I've seen them twice, and they were fantastic.
I've seen them 3 times. I saw them
you saw them in San Francisco
too. And I think a lot of that's attributed, and they started basically as a touring act 2005 before they put out the Razor to Oblivion EP. So they've been like touring 3 years before they put on an EP, and then touring on that, and then bam.
So they got their chops, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And this is, along with Danzig, I think one of the great mysteries of 2010.
I would have put this over the Nails for sure. The Nails is good. I've heard it a couple times.
Nails is great.
But
just seeing these guys live and knowing how authentic they are, that it's not a bullshit studio record or
humble
something
dudes,
like that.
yeah, and just
they're the nicest. They stayed with our friend Monica and Jay when they were playing in Detroit. I mean, these are just nice guys.
And with all the fantastic bands that were lined up at Maryland Death Fest, they were one of the standout bands.
Yeah, everybody who saw the Black Breath inside was blown away by it.
Even like naysayers, like, "Oh, who the hell's this?"
Yeah, like, it's Sutherland. And then they played that song. That opening like razor sharp Marduk Dismember riff on that song just tells you everything. They can pull that off live, and that energy,
and they get it. It's not like they're just like
they're not like teenagers that are like, "Hey."
Well, there's the whole movement a while ago with like Unearth and who's the band that opened for At the Gates when we saw them.
Darkest Hour.
Although
I like Unearth, so.
Well, I'm just saying, there's that was like the first kind of incarnation of the Swedish adoption into hardcore,
the new wave of
which
American
sometimes was successful, sometimes wasn't. But this isn't even part of that. It's like its own. It's its own thing. It's not even in a. It's. I mean, this seems like the record that would have came out after Left Hand Path, before Clandestine, almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't get it. I mean, I know that there's some anti-Southern Lord sentiments that are floating around sometimes, but that Nails was on Southern Lord, and that got positive attention. Yeah. So, like, I don't know, like, you don't see anything about these guys. Like,
I don't remember seeing any reviews in any magazine for
this record wasn't even reviewed in Decibel. I remember that. And I remember stumbling upon this record. Do you remember I went down to the record store in Roseville that's closing down now, Record Time. And remember, I came back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was after I had to get my photo for Teacher of the Year or whatever. I went to the record store and found this in the Napalm Coalesce split.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home and being like, "Did you know Black Breath had a full length out?" And we were both like, "No." And sure as shit, it was a huge evolution from Razor to Oblivion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And again, it's weird. Why no attention? I mean, how many festivals and how many killer concerts these guys have to put on before somebody gives them some street cred?
Yeah.
But they're definitely cool guys. We can say that, and they hold up and get the record. If you don't have it, it's definitely one of those that hasn't been.
Buy it from them on tour. I got the LP, 180 gram LP for $10.
There you go.
And part of that goes in their pocket.
Yeah, no shit. And they have some cool T-shirts. I got a Black Breath shirt as well. So, but we've come to the end of part 2, and what an odd ending it will be. And this is a band we've volleyed about the potentiality of doing a show on. Although that would be, I don't even know how we'd approach it. It'd have
to be multi-parted. And what we're talking about is France's very own Deathspell Omega. The record Paracletus. Yeah. Which is not, it almost sounds like a paraplegic hillbilly.
Yes.
But it's not. It's a Latinized word for comforter or the Holy Spirit. And this goes along with their the metaphysical trilogy, The God, the Devil, and Man. And here's where this is getting a little bit dicey. Go back to some of their other records. See, Monumentum Requires Circumspence was the one 2 records ago.
Yep. Then you had that one song EP that was like 20 minutes long.
I don't know if they necessarily throw that in, but the other one, the other full length was Fas, It's Maledicti Inenium Eternum.
Espiritu Santo. It's like a Godfather right now.
It's like that, yeah.
It's
like I'm in Army of Darkness reciting stuff. But the orthodox black metal of Deathspell Omega.
Yeah.
Just go buy all their records. Basically, you don't have to pronounce them.
They're fantastic, and their early stuff was pretty grim, Burzum based stuff.
It really wasn't that interesting, tell you the truth.
And then they just started to get more and more dynamic and more
There's the first, I forget what it's called now, but the first 3-song EP that I picked up, years ago. I think I picked up when it came out. Now, really not knowing anything about them except a couple people were like, yeah, you got to check this band out. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And now, to where they are now, the song that we're going to play...
The pair of songs, Dearth and Phosphene.
Yeah, if you were not to tell anybody what this was, you would think... You made this comparison. I thought it was brilliant.
Converge.
It sounds like a Converge song up until you get some of the screams and that kind of thing in it. But it's really cool to see the walls of black metal kind of break down a little bit too, where bass is really prevalent. There's
a sweet bass breakdown,
dynamicism in the guitars. It's a really full, nice sound, but still oppressive and grim.
It's really building towards like the apocalypse,
and it's almost as technical as an Atheist record.
Yeah. It's
the time changes and stuff.
It's very discomforting and full of dissonance, and that's kind of what these orthodox black metal bands are sort of all about.
Yeah, Funeral Mist and a lot of the
But this, to me, what's happened in the last couple of Deathspell Omegas, it's almost more listenable than like Funeral Mist in a way, because it's like something that you could play for people who. Like Funeral Mist, I feel like that's for people who are fully enveloped into metal. You're not gonna. Whereas like this record or like the Agalloch, I don't want to say that they're part of that, but those are kind of records you could maybe pull in some outsiders who are fascinated by. It's just such a weird sound, the fact that there's bass and that there's like these weird like dynamics of like Converge atmospherics kind of going on, with the Isis-y neurosis.
Well, and this has made it on like even like Philip Cope from Kylesa. This was on his year-end list. And for some reason, Deathspell Omega they've got a ridiculous kind of aura about them that they don't do interviews. They're not pictured. They don't play live. They're just this kind of enigma, but they do really interesting music. They're like the Sonic Youth of black metal.
Yeah, every record's like worth like checking out and kind of digging into.
Yeah,
and it's tough. I bet if you were to play me a record, I wouldn't be able to tell you which record it was from or whatever. There's like a seamlessness to like their music.
It works in movements. It's not in tracks. And especially on this record, it's like I was just going to play Dearth, but I'm like, it's kind of it. And just then
I said, why don't you play 2? Because honestly, it doesn't make sense to just you have to hear when it kicks in and gets fucking fast all of a sudden, like crazy. But French geniuses, man, these guys are cool, and it's cool to finally get them on a show. At least give you a little preview if you haven't heard this stuff, So a good way to close out part 2. I know we'll probably be mentioning this in the next part, but again, with any of this stuff on part 1 or part 2, give us some of your thoughts if there's like a band that jumped out to you that you hadn't heard much before.
Or especially if your list differs from ours, I'd like to see.
And I'm sure they did, because there's a lot of big records. I'm sure we left off, but these are kind of our personal tastes and things that we were kind of gelling on. So, but
and that's the whole point of lists,
exactly. But shoot us an email, recommendpodcast@gmail.com, or just leave us some notice on iTunes and stuff. But we'll remind you again at the end of part 3 for sure.
Yes.
Before we get too far along in the process. So. But enjoy Dearth and Phosphene from the Paracletus record from Deathspell Omega.
La mince clameur de ces êtres iniques et inabsous, pleurant à la sortie du monde, se perd dans ce royaume d'effroi et de cendres. Sinistre abscission. Et la solitude du jardin de Gethsémani en partage.